Okay, cool. Thanks for that, Cara.
Well, it's good to see you. Finally meet you. I've been trying to contact the band for a long time. I spent a few
Right, okay.
I spent a few years in the UK a long time ago, but
Oh, did you?
you were in a hiatus, so you didn't play those days.
Oh, what a
Um,
shame you didn't get to see us.
yeah, yeah. Well, who knows? Who knows in the future? I don't
Right.
know.
Oh, that's good. And where are you, Francisco? Are you in Chile?
I'm in Santiago, right? Yes,
Yeah, brilliant.
in Santiago.
How is it?
Well, now it's boiling hot. It's boiling hot.
Wow,
Yeah, which is good because
it's really cold here.
it's going to be like a long summer, I think, a very long summer.
Oh, good.
You never
Good.
been here before, right? Never been here.
No, the only places we went to in South America were Brazil, Mexico, Argentina,
Yeah,
and that was it.
yeah, I
So
remember
yeah,
that in Argentina.
I would have loved to have gone to Chile.
Yeah, as you can see, I'm a big fan of the band.
Yes, I can see.
I got this one from the very beginning. I mean, it says October '91.
Does
Yeah.
it really?
Look, I bought it in October '91. So
Oh wow! And
it's the Chilean edition of the cassette.
I think that,
Yeah.
what language is it? Is it written in English or is it?
No, English. Just the credits and the technical stuff in Spanish, but the titles are all in English. Yeah.
Ah, fantastic.
Yeah. So how you doing? You all right?
Yeah, I'm really good. Yeah, just busy working and writing some music and sorting bits and bobs out. But yeah, I'm good. I'm feeling positive. We're on another lockdown.
Yeah.
I'm sure that must have affected you as well.
Yeah, yeah. Because the example we have of all this is Europe. So everything that happens there, a few weeks later, it will happen here.
Okay, right.
Yeah.
So yeah, we're on a 1 month lockdown. So no bars, no pubs, no restaurants.
Right.
Only a few shops for essentials.
Yeah.
So yeah, life is strange.
Yeah, it's so weird. It's so weird. You never thought you may go through all this, right? We never thought of that.
I didn't see it coming.
No, not at all.
No.
Yeah, well, James, I would like to start the conversation with this 30 years of Sugar Dip. Because it was something you started playing before. I mean, long before releasing the first album, and you were part of the, let's say, the 80s decade. You're a band of the 80s, but had a huge success in the 90s, in the early 90s. So you lived through this change of decade, change of sounds, change of the way music business worked. So please, can you tell me about those previous the days previous to the release of the first album?
Okay, so you are correct. I mean, I guess our learning process when we played in bands and, you know, when we were in school bands and rehearsing and stuff, it was like the 80s, and it was a very different music scene. It was more independent. They used to call it indie music.
Mhm.
And it was all bands like the Smiths and the Cure. And it wasn't really till the late 80s that dance music came along. But obviously, us playing in bands, we always, you know, we were in guitar indie bands. And I mean, E.M.F happened really quick, but we did sort of hone our crafts and learn our skills playing many years before in school bands and bands with different names. A lot of the members of E.M.F, we were all in separate bands, but then in bands together, but then, you know, separately.
Mhm.
And so I think by the time it got to 89, 90 and the turn into 91, 92, we were kind of really heavily influenced by dance music. And I guess that was the big change, that electronic dance music became the thing, and we jumped on that and we loved dance music.
In that sense, you were more related to the Manchester scene, let's say, the raves and all that.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, that was kind of the new, fresh thing at the time, but we were still kind of, indie guitar bands, but we
Hmm.
kind of just brought in some you know, electronic elements like sequencers and drum machines and samples.
Hmm.
And, and definitely all that Manchester thing. It was all about going out, partying, raving. Songs were more groove based. And it was all about the dance floor, really, what makes you move on the dance floor.
Right, right. And I want to know the process of Schubert Deep. I mean, the composing process, because uh, and in the studio, you didn't work with a let's say a famous producer. You didn't like all everything was done all by you.
Well, yeah, it was. I mean, of those 10 tracks that went on Schubert Dip were the first 10 tracks we wrote.
Uh huh.
Um, we demoed them on a little 4 track. We went out and played them. So by the time we come into the studio, the songs were all fully formed. And it was a case that it wasn't really overproduced Schubert Dip. It was a case of that's how the band sounded.
Right.
We were very limited on equipment. So we had like one sequencer. Derry had a sampler that was played a few sounds. Um, and I mean, when we did start Schubert Dip, we did go in with a producer. He was a Belgian guy called Pascal Gabriel, who'd had some success with um, S Express. I don't know
Uh
if you
huh.
remember that,
Yeah. Yeah.
and some of the 90s dance bands, but it didn't really work for us. So in the end, we kind of, it was almost self-produced, but we also went in with this guy called Ralph Jezard, who was an old punk and he understood guitars and live
Hmm.
drums, but he'd also just done a big record, 21 Seconds to Comply by Silver Bullets, which was like a big, it was almost like hip hop sort of drive in hip hop. So he understood dance music,
Yeah.
but
Yeah.
he also understood that we were a band and it was more, we were kind of, we wanted to be a live band and we wanted that energy of the gigs captured in the recording.
But these names were your options. I mean, or were recommendations by the label.
Um, well, they were recommended by management and put forward.
Uh huh.
We were still really young kids and we didn't understand the music business. And we certainly didn't know, you work with producers and you go into these studios and you do all this stuff. We were kind of guided a little bit, but, ultimately we had the say in what we did.
Right. Right. And well, I got the record here, and I just realized I didn't know you played. Claudia Fontaine was involved in the vocals as well. She was a huge artist as well. She was part of the. She's in well Pink Floyd's album, and she toured with them.
Yeah, she was amazing. She did some recordings with the Jam, Beat Surrender. She also worked on the Soul to Soul track, I think, with Soul to Soul. So yeah, she came in and we kind of hired her to come in the studio and do the
Right.
backing vocals. It's not like we knew her or anything.
Oh, right. But
And probably at the time we probably didn't know what she had done. It was
right,
afterwards, a bit of research. Like, wow, okay. But
right.
yeah, that was quite a result.
But how was that feeling when you were in the studio recording your first album with the support of a big label like EMI, and you had all these opportunities to have big names in your recording because you were very young. Everything was happening so fast.
Yeah, and it was, I guess we were lucky because Unbelievable had come out and it had a bit of success, and that gave us a little bit of, we could say what we wanted a bit in the studio and try things out, but we certainly weren't big stars at that point. We couldn't really dictate, big recording budgets or anything. I mean,
Mhm.
to be honest with you, it didn't cost a lot to record it. We, certainly compared to the next few albums where we spent loads of money, it was
Mhm.
done very quick. Um, yeah, in the studios weren't that glamorous either. It was very much, people were still hedging their bets whether we were gonna, make it or not. So
Right. Okay,
no,
I
it
understand.
wasn't like we were superstars or anything.
Right. But the the single "Unbelievable" was released at the end of the 1990, and the album came out half a year later.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
but everything was recorded in 1990, or it was recorded afterwards.
No, Unbelievable was recorded first.
Uh huh.
Um, all the other songs had been demoed, but it was a case of finishing the album very quick to, to keep up with the success of Unbelievable.
Hmm.
And the actual guy who produced Unbelievable was Ralph Jezard. He did that single. Then we went off and worked with some other producers. And in the end, we went back to Ralph Jezard because Unbelievable sounded so good, and that's how we wanted to sound.
Yeah. And what happens with the band, with you personally and your family, you circle, you close circle, when you realized "Unbelievable" was #1 in the US, #3 in the UK, and you were touring the world.
Yes,
That,
we were
that, that,
touring.
sorry. I mean, that's a question I always want to ask to the musicians when they are very young and they release a debut album and it explodes everywhere. You know what I mean? Because it's a unique feeling. You live once in a lifetime.
Oh yeah, and it's a whirlwind, and it was, everything was happening so fast. We didn't really have time to breathe and take it all in. It was amazing. I mean, and we were kept busy, like you say. What's it say? We were touring a lot and gigging all the time, and when Unbelievable went out in America, we were touring over there all the time, like six weeks tours at a time, on a bus, living on a bus, just going from city to city, doing like record store signings, radio interviews, TV shows, and it was just like bam, bam, bang. So we didn't really have time to think about. Although we were loving it, don't get us wrong, it was the best ever, but it was certainly. I'm glad I was young when I did it because it took a lot of energy.
Yeah, yeah. What of the family? I mean, when they realized that you were up there.
Oh, well, my mum and dad loved it. I mean, they were really proud, I guess, apart from some of the press, which kind of painted us as bad boys and had to do quite a bit of explaining.
Yeah,
But,
in
but yeah,
yeah. Now, in the credits of the album, for example, Zach says, no, sorry, it's not Zach, it's Ian. Thanks, mom and dad, for not making me get a proper job. I think
yeah,
there was a.
that's so true.
I think the families
Well,
in
Ian,
general have this feeling of at the beginning when okay, you're in a band. It's it's not easy an easy decision to let's say for parents to accept it, but when they realize that they the things really work.
yeah, I mean, I always wanted. My mum and dad says, "What do you want to be when you grow up?" And from a very young age, I just said, "I want to be in a band. I want to be a musician. I want to be famous." And they just let me get on with it. They didn't put any pressure on me to do anything else. And thankfully, it worked out for me. Ian, just before E.M.F was going to sign our record deal, Ian got a place at university to go off to do an art degree,
Hmm.
and he had to make a decision. He had to make a decision. Do I try and make it in the band, or do I go and do my university degree that I was planning to do? So I think it was harder for Ian. Um, but yeah, there was no other optional route. We just had to be in a band, and I think we would have just been in bands anyway. Thankfully we made it though.
When you starting to tour and all this sugar dip success was around, uh, how did you cope with the time for songwriting, for thinking in the next album in Stigma?
Well, I mean, Stigma, a lot of the ideas were actually written or gathered whilst we were on the road touring. We used to jam a little bit in sound checks. Um, we came back. It's a very much a band sounding album, that, and it was pretty evident that we'd been playing every night for the last year. So the band was sounding really hot and we were really gelling together.
Mm.
Um, but it was a case of scrambling songs and ideas together. And, the first album was quite different because me and Ian, we kind of used to go to his mom's house and we wrote it on his mom's piano. And, we didn't realize what these songs were going to be. like I Believe and Unbelievable. The second album was a little bit different, where we were a bit more adventurous. We were a really good live band by that point, and Stigma came together really quick. Actually, the second album did.
And in between albums, you release an EP that includes one of the songs you used to play live, is "Search and Destroy" by Iggy and the Stooges. And
Yes.
that's an absolutely different influence, and maybe an influence from the very beginning, the guitar bands.
Yeah.
You
Yeah.
made it more indie, more dance floor.
Yeah, I mean, it's a song that we'd loved for ages, Search and Destroy. And I think that EP that we did just bridged the gap between the two records. But it was kind of a little nod towards the direction we were going in, a bit of a live, harder guitar sound.
What happened when you realized that the Stigma wasn't that successful as the first album? Were you prepared for that? Was one of the options?
No, we weren't prepared for it, but I think it was good that we made that album. I guess, I mean, the only letdown was that it didn't sell so many copies, and then we were under pressure from the record label, because
Right.
obviously the first record sold lots of copies, and the record labels love you when you're selling records, and they kind of move on quite quick if you're not selling records.
Mm-hmm. And that was the period when you came to South America for the first time. You played in Brazil. I think it was a kind of Rock in Rio, Hollywood Rock in Rio.
Yes.
And a couple of years later, you came to Argentina to play for
Okay.
a TV show and a big stadium as well. How was that?
Yes.
How are your memories of those gigs?
I can't remember the gigs. I remember Rock in Rio, because that was huge. That was quite bizarre, Brazil, because we played a massive gig to lots of fans, and it was great. But then I think we played actually, this might have been Argentina, where we played another one, and it was more a sort of private elite club where people paid money and sat at tables, and I didn't really like that. But there was quite a divide between the gigs. It was obviously a gig for the people, but then a gig for people who had money. So it was kind of quite strange. We don't really get that class thing in Britain so much. A gig's a gig. But it was obviously, it was very strange. But I did love South America. It was brilliant. It was great.
And then Mexico in '95, I think, '93 as well. After Argentina, you traveled to Mexico, a couple of gigs, and there is a special feeling of the Latin American audience with British bands, especially. It's a special. The response is different, more enthusiastic, let's say.
Very much so. Yeah, really enthusiastic, very loud, and yeah, I wonder why that is. Is it because British European bands don't get to go there that often? It's a long way away.
Well, we're talking about 30 years ago. The only chance we have to see those bands were on the telly.
True. Yeah, that's it. So yeah, but I have got really fond memories.
I have
Quite crazy.
this curiosity. Let's say, is there any connection with that period of traveling for the first time to Latin America and then record an album called Cha Cha Cha? Because that's a Latin word. That's a Latin music. Well, what's the main connection of that?
I don't know. I don't think there is. I don't think there is. I'm not quite sure where that came from. It might be a reference to something like partying or something. Cha cha cha.
All right.
Without saying too much, I think it was like a reference to something.
And you also recorded a cover version of the Monkees with two TV personalities of the UK, Mortimer and I can't remember the other guy.
Reese, Vic and Bob. They were huge comedians on, like, alternative comedians on British TV. Really funny. We used to love them so much. And occasionally they used to do a charity record. They did one the year before with a band called The Wonder Stuff. and then they asked us to do it. It was really good fun, but there's always a bit of a curse because every time a band does a song with them, the band usually splits up afterwards, and it happens to the Wonder Stuff. And E.M.F didn't really do much after we did that. So
Right. In those years, the first half of the 80s, I mean the 90s, uh, there was a movement that was the previously to the Britpop, to the Britpop
yeah,
movement, and you were. Did you feel that sometimes uh, the uh, the band splits because of there was a change in the music industry, in the change in the
yeah. I mean,
songwriting in the UK? You didn't
yeah.
follow that path.
Yeah, there was a massive shift in music. I mean, when we started, we were very pop, dance, indie. And then by like 94, 90, you started getting your American grunge music, which
Yeah.
people loved. And then by the mid 90s, it was Brit pop. Do you know Brit pop? Which was your Blur and your Oasis and your Pulp. So we kind of got left behind a little bit. Um, but bands don't last forever. New sounds come along, and so that would kind of put an you know put an end to our success a little bit.
Hmm. And did you have a, well, you mentioned the Wonder Stuff. Uh, do you have colleagues that you admire from your from those years?
Well, I made lots of friends. I mean, some of my best friends now are some of the people we used to play with back then, like Jim Bob from Carter, and Pot Will Eat Itself. And I'm really friendly with Miles from the Wonder Stuff. So, yeah, admire. I mean, I think still my favorite bands are those kind of mid 80s bands like New Order and Echo and the Bunnymen. I really admire them and I really love that music. But I've certainly made a lot of friends with my peers at that time.
Mhm. I also saw that you recorded an album for supporting music workers, right?
Yeah,
To raise
I,
money for those who haven't got a job in this pandemic.
yeah. Well, it was a charity called Help Musicians. And what happened, I was just about to release a solo record at the start of the year. And then everything went crazy because of
Right.
COVID. And I still wanted to release the record, but it just didn't feel right selling it or asking for money when people are struggling. So in the end, I kind of gave the record away, but with charity donations.
Yeah.
So, and it was really successful, and lots of people donated, and lots of people paid what they would have paid for the record,
Hmm.
but the money went to the charity. So it was a nice thing to do.
And how about this solo, the solo, your solo career in this case? Tell me more about this album, please.
Okay, so the last album came out at the start of the year. It was called Aries Pagan,
Uh huh.
and that was the fourth solo album.
Yeah.
And yeah, I've just been releasing solo material, and I've just almost completed another album that I'm hoping to get out in end of February, March. So I've been working hard. I'm actually in my studio at the moment. I don't know if you can see.
Yeah.
So I work from
Great.
home, and I produce it, write it, record it, and release it myself, which is such a nice thing to do.
James, I would like to have a last question, and
Okay.
it's about the legacy you think EMF has, and the influence with bands that came later that took parts of your sound, and what do you think of that?
Well, I'm not quite sure. I mean, certainly, I think that happens all the time because we took sounds from bands before us, and it's just that natural evolution of music, isn't it? But yeah, I mean, I do listen to a record every now and again and go, wow, that sounds a little bit like one of our records, you know. I think, you know, E.M.F was of a time and it sounds special.
Yeah.
Of that time. I mean, we're really lucky that Unbelievable seems to have not gone away and it hasn't dated and you still hear it everywhere. I don't know, do you hear it much in Chile?
Yeah, all the time.
Yeah. So it's like, and it gets used in adverts a lot, and it's kind of stood the test of time, that song has.
Do you
But yeah,
do you research in your I don't know the royalties data where you get radio plays in all over the world? Do you check that?
no.
All right.
They do. I mean, PRS and PPL, so they send a breakdown of it, and you can see, you know,
Okay.
it might be on a radio station in Chile, but
Right.
it's just, yeah, some places it's still more popular than others.
Yeah.
South America is quite popular still, actually.
I see some golden albums on your wall.
Yes, I've got bits and bobs.
Yeah.
And some platinum records, and yeah, it's just.
I suppose
my little space in my house where I can hide away and make music.
I suppose the favorite one is for selling more than 1 million records in of Sugar Dip, right?
Yeah, in America.
Yeah.
Yeah.
A very special place. James, I really appreciate your time. Thanks for.
Thank you. It's been brilliant. And thank you so much for interviewing me.
Thank you. And well, you never know if in the future we can meet again at some festival, some gig. Yeah.
Oh, I'll come to Chile. So what is this for? Is it for a magazine or is it a
this is for it's like a compliment for a podcast.
Oh, okay. So will you use what we've recorded?
Yeah, that's right.
What, the audio or the visuals?
Both.
Oh, so you do a bit of editing.
Right. Yes, that's right.
Fantastic.
Yeah. That's the way I try to work with these interviews.
Excellent. Well, I really look forward to seeing it and hearing it.
Thank you for your time. Thanks, Cara.
Thank you. Right. Thank you. Take care. See you later. Bye.
Cheers. Bye.